with mobility issues. That was one thing I had. Also, the other thing that came to mind when we were going through the attenuation basins. I've had problems on other sites, and there's nothing in the report that says about it, but I'd like it fenced. For young children, there's play areas not far away, and you know, when it's full up with water, it can be quite dangerous to young children. So can we look at that, perhaps a condition that it's fenced off in some way? That's all I have at the moment, thank you.
All right, can we, does anyone have anything to add, first of all, before we move on from the drop curb and the traffic considerations? No, then have we got more discussion about the bridge? Because Councillor Redfern.
I agree. I'm very, very disappointed about the bridge, but the flooding, the information regarding the flooding, if there was a ramp, sort of convinced me. But it's throughout the report, it's commented on as a walking cycleway, and that is just a mistake because it isn't a cycleway really, unless you carry your bike over there. So I think it's a walking route, which is great. I'm not quite sure how could get over the flooding risk, because I think that would be absolutely terrible if the place flooded just because people wanted a ramped bridge. But I agree with Councillor Stowe that it would be the ideal thing to have a ramped bridge, and perhaps some solution can be found.
Okay, Councillor Copley, I saw you had your hand.
You were talking about kind of steps, curbs and things, and I wasn't sure if what I had was directly related, but I did have some concerns about the road. I mean, I know that obviously we've got an informative here because obviously new estate roads are not adopted by HCC. It's their policy unless your road is going to be going to a particularly kind of important place. So just something I wanted to really flag up for when looking at the 106 and making sure that agreement is absolutely clear in terms of how that is going to be dealt with. Is it going to be, you know, a community management trust, a management company? What's going to be set up? Because I'm just aware of issues that we've had in Bishop Stortford where the incorrect body has been set up, and then we're kind of years behind now, and there's all sorts of issues in terms of road adoption, etc. And obviously, I mean, it does seem a bit unfair to me that if you're moving into a new housing estate, you don't get your road adopted, but I appreciate that we don't have any control over policy. But what I think we could have control over is in terms of that agreement, making sure it is absolutely clear in the 106 about what particular entity and how that is going to be managed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased the bridge was brought up because that was one of the first things I had concerns about. And again, yes, my first thought was it is not a cycle bridge because I certainly wouldn't want to carry my bike up those steps. And again, for the mobility scooters, for buggies and wheelchair users, and the fact that some of the housing is built to be suitable for wheelchair users, and then you don't even have a bridge that they can go over. To me, that was just ludicrous. And I read the environmental report, and it explained it caused more flooding problems. I actually would have liked that explained because I couldn't quite grasp where it would cause more flooding problems. But actually listening to the parish councillor that a solution could have been a wetland, I actually thought, oh, that sounds a possible, you know, answer to this. So I would really like to see if that could be explored more.
Could any of the officers explain a little bit more about the flooding risk?
Yes, Chair, through you, thank you. The applicants worked closely with the Environment Agency and submitted a bridge evolution report as part of additional information when we went out to consultation again. And within that document, it shows how the different, or they done theory tests about how different types of modelling would have an impact on flooding within the site and further along the river. And I'm not an Environment Agency expert, but it appears that as if the bridge was ramped, there's key issues in the fact that the structure of the bridge would need to be a lot more substantial. And therefore, in terms of the, bear with me 1 second, I'll put the report here. In terms of the hydrology of the way the water works within the River Bean, it would cause flooding. It's not clear because this is a colour document online, but you can see at the point of where the bridge is ramped, the flooding would happen further north along the River Bean,
Just
which
did-
is,
I remember reading it said 300 meters upstream. is that-
yes, yes, correct. And therefore, you know, the applicants within that document have set out the time it's taken to get the Environment Agency to remove the initial objection of the ramp bridge to come to this solution of a bridge. Unfortunately, as I said, had to be stepped because the balancing of flooding against the bridge design had to be weighed up.
Has anybody else got anything to specifically on this bridge and the access? Councillor Hill.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the comments about the bridge. If no solution can be found, and the only way for people to access town using buggies or disabilities through the pavement, are there any adaptations to make the pavement wider, more separation from traffic? And so nobody parking on it, you know, that's a real issue around here, you know, people parking on pavements and access is difficult for people in buggies and wheelchairs and whatnot.
Anyone else? Councillor Connolly.
Do we know if the Environment Agency have been consulted on the idea of wetland and the proposal that the parish council have made?
I'll pass you to the officer.
Yes, the Environment Agency were well aware of the different landscaping designs put forward to them, and they have commented that, or working with the applicants, that this is the solution for the bridge if we need to deliver a bridge, unfortunately.
Sorry, it's fair to say that you know, the officers have been share the concerns that have been put forward today by the members, and certainly we pushed the developer very hard to try and get the very best outcome that delivers an accessible solution as best as it can. And part of the evolution of the bridge gives some of that narrative and some of the discussions that have taken place between the council officers, Fairview, and the Environment Agency. The Environment Agency have sort of given very strong indications that in order a ramped bridge, there would be a very substantial structure which could, and in our view, would look very out of place in a distinct rural setting. And so whilst there could, in theory, be a ramp solution that may minimise flood risk in the area, the size of that structure would certainly be a massive encumbrance for the quality of the development, and therefore, you know, we felt that it wasn't necessary to pursue that any further. I mean, I hear the suggestion about an informative that's been put forward about continuing discussions with the Environment Agency, and I'm sure that Fairview will be willing to do that as part of their continued discussions. The policy itself requires the approval of the Environment Agency before any substantial occupation of the development, and so I understand that the applicant would be willing to do that. I say the final thing, and I do stress that this is a solution that officers have arrived at as a one and only solution that's been put forward that has approval from the Environment Agency, and to go back to the Environment Agency again would put inevitable major delays on the project, and ultimately might not result in a very different outcome that we've got on the table today. So I think the officer's view is that we've reached the sort of end of the road, and as far as the negotiations can go on this, and the solution put forward is, I think, we think is the suitable solution.
Okay, let's just go. Oh, Councillor Devonshire. All right. Yep, go for it.
Yeah, one of the parish council representations, they say the design of houses does not accord with the neighbourhood plan. Can that be explained to us? And why doesn't it accord with the neighbourhood plan?
Sorry, councillor, can you give me the paragraph reference, please?
Are you able to give the paragraph number? Is that on your? That's it. I think that'll help.
It does say that these were reviewed and on the next page, it's not in the remaining comments after it. Would you concur?
Sorry, yes, Chair. I was just reading that, yes.
So it does look like it's been addressed. Can I go just before we forget to go back to the attenuation basin that Councillor Stowe brought up? Do other members think that presents a risk, and should we be going straight for fencing, or should we have an informative about health and safety concerns? Councillor Buckmaster.
Yes, actually, Chair, I do think it does prove a risk. Having seen the attenuation ponds on many different developments, it's surprising how deep some of them are during the winter months. And, you know, I know certainly on some developments, they're designed to be very shallow ponds, but others aren't. They are designed to be deeper. And if we have a wet winter, like we had this year, they actually do get very deep. And I have seen them on developments where they're not fenced. And I do feel being near at the playground area, it is a risk.
Can I, just because it says bioswale, my understanding is these are directional flows that are then impeded by some sort of bund or earthwork. Can you explain, could you explain more about these bioswales, or?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, they are generally bunded with shallow ground level, so there's less of a risk to health and safety for anyone falling within that. But they are generally created with bunding or some sort of distinction between the land levels, so people don't just go wandering into them, like you know, from say the footpath level or the play area next to it. It'll be a distinct boundary between the two. But we're more officers more than happy to work with the applicants to have that as a condition to finalise those details.
Yeah. What did Councillor Dunlop?
I'd just like to add that I live in an estate that does have several of them, and they're bounded by a small fence about that height, but also they have a life, a life belt, not a what do you call them?
Yeah,
life ring. Yeah, a life ring. So each one has its own life ring. So should a child fall in there, another child's there, doesn't want to go in after it, they can throw that in, and they'll avoid a nasty situation. So if we can add that as well, I think that would be worthwhile doing.
Councillor Stowe?
No.
Reminds members that it takes a saucer full of water to drown a baby, and I don't want an informative, I want a condition that we have a fence around the attenuation basin.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Condition 18 covers boundary treatments and fencing around the development. Is more than happy to add something along the lines for the attenuation, boundary treatment or fencing treatment around the attenuation, if that's going to appease members.
Would we?
Can I just finish off? I mean, I've seen that condition, I've read that condition. It does not cover the attenuation basins. It needs to be specifically mentioned, a fence around it.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you, councillor. That's what I was suggesting, to add something more specific for the attenuation area.
Councillor Bull.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is entirely different.
Can I stop you there then? I think if somebody would like to make a motion on this amending the condition,
It would be good to debate first, and if somebody wants a motion, then make the motion.
shall we write at the very?
No, let's continue.
All right, we'll continue the debate for now. Councillor Bill,
I've got the floor, have I, Chairman?
you do.
Right, thank you. Yeah, my comment is. on the
Councillor
house-
Bill, yes, your microphone is on.
Oh, that, right. Not engaged, yeah. Yeah, mine is about the housing mix. If this goes through tonight, that's a fair sized development for a small village. And when you look at the housing mix, we campaign for the youngsters to get on the ladder to buy their own houses, 2-bedroom. And yet I look at this and there's 24 out of proportion, 4-bedroom houses. Now you could argue if you was near Stansted Airport that these were built for the pilots, but I don't see anything like that in this particular area. Thank you, Chairman.
Does anyone else want to speak about the housing? Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you. Yes, I actually wanted to talk about the affordable housing.
Mhm.
As in paragraph, I mean, obviously you start in paragraph 915, but going into paragraph 918, it actually says there is a conflict between the neighbourhood plan and the district housing officers about the split in the affordable rent. Now, you've got more, again, you have flats as affordable because that's what the neighbourhood plan said they needed more flats. But as a district, we actually need more 3-bedroom houses. Now that's, I've sat on many of these development meetings and each planning comes up and every developer goes, oh no, you only need flats. Now, when are we actually going to look at this as a district-wide need and not just individual developments? A district-wide need for affordable houses is 3-bedroom houses. That's what we need. And so many of these developments end up having just lots of apartments, lots of flats. So I was quite disappointed to see how many, again, 1- and 2-bedroom flats. I was also very confused, and actually I wanted to see the map of the affordable housing, please, because it states here there are 4 3-bedroom houses and 2 4-bedroom houses, but the ones you've marked there are all the flats, and I couldn't see what ones were the 2- and 3-bedroom, sorry, the 3- and 4-bedroom
At the
houses.
top, you see the 6.
Those ones that are
Their houses,
their
their
houses.
individual dwellings.
Thank you. The other thing I was going to say is the fact, yes, they're not pepper potted. And I do know that in one of our local developments, when the developer changed the pepper potting and put them all in one area, we've had a lot of problems. Unallocated parking, especially, it has caused the point where we've had to have the police down. So can I just recommend to the developer that he doesn't do unallocated parking, because believe me, it will cause a conflict. And so I would, some really, I mean, obviously that was a lot of statements, but my query is about why have we got so many flats and small, I don't even think they're 1-bedroom houses. I think they're all just 1-bedroom flats, when we actually need as a district 3-bedroom houses.
Would anybody? Councillor Redfern.
Sorry, I'd like to stress what Councillor Buckmaster has said about the flats, but I forgot my second point. The larger houses are needed. And one of the things that's missing, which I couldn't find, was the tenure of these at all. What were going to be, social houses and which were going to be intermediate houses and things like that. There's something else that Councillor Buxmaster said that I wanted to talk about. Is the parking. Yes, I think unallocated parking is a disaster waiting to happen. I also don't think the parking is enough. I know that it's according to our thing, but if there are cars that won't fit on the estate, they're going to try parking on Walken Road. It's very narrow. We can't afford for cars to be parked outside the development. And I am really concerned about unallocated parking because there'll be fights, because there's limited parking as well. And I really do think there ought to be some more thought about parking. I'm sorry, but I do. Thank you.
Yeah, there is page 37 covers the mixture of tenures, and I don't know if anyone read the 37. Sorry, Councillor Stowe.
I believe the mixture of tenure is 75-25%. But the point I did notice in the report is that our officers, our housing officers, actually said that the greatest need is for 3 and 4 bedroom houses, and flats are not really the most suitable thing for them at the moment. So I mean, they said that in the report, and it appears that it hasn't been carried through, has it?
I think there was also in the report it mentions the Watton at Stone neighbourhood plan, which is more up to date and has a preference for 1 bedroom properties.
Yeah, point taken. But to be compliant with WAS 7 and WAS MP, the condition, the type of tenure would need to change if you read their neighbourhood plan. That's the way I read it, anyway.
Does anybody else want to speak on the subject of housing mix? Councillor Dunlop.
It's a slightly different point. It was condition 7 in the additional representation summary regarding houses that can be adapted for wheelchair access, and what's proposed by the applicant is the officers are not in favour of that. Can I just confirm that it won't go through, or do we have to put a condition in to say that it won't go through?
Thank you, Chair. That's entirely different, I think, I think in terms of condition 7, the applicant...
Sorry, condition 17.
17, okay,
Sorry, yeah.
sorry.
I did say.
So
I couldn't work out. It's originally 10% of all dwellings will have wheelchair access adaptability, which would mean that there would be 6.
Yes.
And now it's saying 10% of all affordable houses, which means it would be 2.4.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is it 2 or 3, and can we reject it completely? That's what I prefer.
Yes. In simple terms, yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Right, members, are there any Councillor Buckmaster, you were first.
Sorry, yes, going back onto the parking, sorry about this. Can I again ask, again, this is from experience with the development in my ward, that the management companies who take over the governance of the streets and everything else had put in a rule about no commercial vans. But we then found that obviously some of the residents, it was their work van, and they were not being allowed to park in their own road, in their own their own drive, because they had a commercial van. So I would really I'm asking, is this development going to have the same rules?
Could I ask one of the officers to?
Thank you, Chair. As part of Highways comments, they have asked for a construction management plan, which will cover parking for contractors to be part and parcel of additional details.
Sorry, I'm asking for the residents. Will the residents be allowed to park their own commercial vehicles So once the development's built and the management company takes over the running of the governance of the streets, we have found, as I say, in one of our local developments, that the actual homeowners are not being allowed to park their own vehicles.
Apologies, councillor. In terms of internal car parking, it'd be up to the role of the management to resolve that with the owners of the dwellings and the wider community.
Is that something that could be an informative, or is this overreaching?
I think we're stretching it a bit in terms of planning.
Councillor Connolly.
That's an issue very close to my heart because we've got that experience in Hertford as well. I did find the root cause of it, and it is a covenant in the deeds, which is set up by the developer, I guess, when they parcel up the land. I have put a request in to our executive member to pursue a policy that scrutinises those covenants, because they will eventually really harm our towns.
Councillor Dunlop.
Different subject again. It says 9.65, a range of potentially appropriate low carbon renewable technology be used, including air source heat pumps and electric heating. But there will be gas going to the site as well. I was a little bit puzzled by that. And then I heard a comment from Mr. Jackson regarding domestic hot water pumps and wondered what they were exactly.
I don't know what domestic hot water pumps are.
To my mind, they're things that move hot water around,
Yeah.
but not a form of heating in its own right. Sorry, let me ask another fundamental question. Is there gas on the site?
I believe so, but
Unfortunately, we don't know the technical details whether gas is going to be on site. However, there is a condition to request further details on how the sustainability measures are going to be implemented across the site. I'm well aware, I think I know where you're coming from in terms of building regs and gas being phased out, but unfortunately that's not within the planning remit we're here today.
Councillor Burt.
Just looking at all the sustainability, particularly energy that Councillor Dunlop was talking about. I just wonder, there's no mention of solar panels, and whenever I see big new housing developments, there seem to be very few, if any at all, solar panels, and I wondered if they have been considered, and if not, why not, perhaps.
Thank you, Chair. As part of the proposal, the applicants had submitted a sustainability checklist, and as part of that, drawing up the checklist, they go through a procedure of what renewable technologies will be the most beneficial for the site. And it was found, as the applicants have already stated, that high efficient fabric, which is the building first ventilation heating system, together with airtight builds and air source heat pumps, is possibly the best renewable solution rather than solar panels.
Councillor Redfern, did I see your hand?
Yes, you did. I was
Sorry.
just thinking, did I have an answer to the question about the dropped curb outside the present buildings that are there? Because it's mentioned, but I didn't really understand. You know, it's mentioned in the planning, but I didn't really understand whether that would happen. The residents have asked for a drop curb, a long one.
Could we?
Thank you, Chair. Our colleagues from Highways are here, so I'll just pass it over to Mr. Armstrong to answer that directly. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, members. Yeah, good to be here and hear the conversation. I think the concern that has been raised relates to numbers 17 to 25 Walken Road. So they're accessed from a private access road that runs parallel to Walken Road. So it's kind of a slightly unmade surface. Yeah, the concerns I think were around vehicles, particularly from the south, turning in left and turning out right, because effectively they're having to make a U-turn because it runs parallel to the road. I think, yeah, some of the comments were around, by putting in a footway across that access, building out a footway, which is necessary, obviously, to get residents who travel on foot from the development into the village centre. In putting that in place, it would cause that movement to be even more challenging than it currently is. The applicant has used some vehicle tracking software to demonstrate that it will still work under the new design. Essentially, what's happening at the moment is, so if you're travelling in from the south, going north and turning left, to get the swing in to that private access road, you have to go over onto the opposite side of the road of the opposite side of the carriageway to get the swing in. The new footway is on the western side, so it's actually putting vehicles on that same side of the opposite side of the carriageway anyway. So it doesn't actually affect the movement in and out. If the footway was on the other side being built out, then a vehicle going north wanting to turn in left wouldn't be able to make the swing in. But because it's going on the western side, hopefully that makes some sense. If you look at the I think it's one of the so yeah, I think it's just to assure members that it's been tracked, it's been thought through. This will proceed if members obviously give approval tonight. There'll be a detailed engineering drawings coming forward later on through Section 278 agreement. That'll all be subject to a stage 2 road safety audit, and the design can be tweaked then if necessary. So this can all be checked again and looked at again. I think the key word in that is tweaked. Obviously, if there's any kind of more fundamental changes, it can cause problems going back through planning. But there is an opportunity to kind of tweak the design if necessary. But yeah, we're aware of it and confident that it won't be an issue.
Councillor Dunlop.
That's my last one. It's in, again, the additional representation summary, condition 4. It looks to me like you can build all the houses, not build the bridge, and then not have to have a plan for maintaining the site. Is that correct? Because it says that you don't, no development shall take place until a landscape and ecological management plan, including long-term objectives, management responsibilities and maintenance schedules and all landscape areas has been submitted. That you're asking for that to be changed to prior to the bridge being built. So the bridge has to be built first before that is due. So if you don't build the bridge, then you have no plan how to maintain the estate. That's my logic in it. I hope I'm wrong.
Thank you, Chair. In answer to your question, there's a few strands to the bridge, ensuring that the bridge is put forward as part of the development. First is through Section 106 and Condition 42, which was mentioned previously, where no more than 30% of the houses can be built until the bridge is in place. And as part of that, then the management plan and everything around the bridge will still be delivered, but the bridge essentially will not be separated. I think that's the concern you were having, but the bridge cannot be separated out between the residential development because there's tie-ins through other conditions and the Section 106.
So the plan would have to take place at 30%.
Correct.
Built. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Connolly.
Can I just come back to the heat pumps again, please? It's paragraph 9.65 that mentions them. And it says that air source heat pumps and electric heating is preferred technology. And then it says that there will be gas boilers used for the dwellings. It just seems bonkers. Air source heat pumps can make hot water. We just don't need two sources in each individual dwelling. I really would like that to be revisited, and especially as that we don't really need the gas and we don't want it.
What's our leverage on that?
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, we have to go with the technical information that has been submitted to us. And if that is the viable option for the applicant to deliver the hot water to houses, there could be all unknown issues that we're not aware of in terms of delivering hot water to the site, either gas or air source heat pump or things like that. And that's why we've put a condition in. So it will be an evolving issue as we go along, or as the applicant starts doing detailed designs of the renewable energy. And when they submit that to us, we can't obviously say to them, we don't want gas, because that could be the only primary source of them getting energy to those dwellings to allow for hot water to those dwellings.
I think the point is that Councillor Connolly's making is that the air source heat pumps, if they're going to be in there anyway, they could be providing that. But is that something that's already implied in one of the conditions you're saying?
And well, first, we haven't got any policy to hook that no gas can come to the site. Second, in terms of the condition, the applicants have clearly set out that they've done the initial checklist of the renewable energies that are potentially could be used on site. There are other detailed issues that they will need to go through to confirm what renewable energies will be used on site. And that's what the condition is in there, to require the applicants to look at the renewable energy and what is the primary sources for the different houses, because different houses could require different renewable energy sources.
It's not really about the renewable energies. You're just putting two sources in a house that will heat hot water. I mean, there's enough technology knowledge within the offices to discuss that with developers, surely.
Councillor Copley.
I was just wondering whether it could just be changed slightly to say something like, because the last sentence says it's noted that gas boilers will be used for the dwellings. Can't it be said instead that if the other two things are not viable or something, then they will use in those circumstances, rather than just saying they will definitely be used?
Could you?
Thank you, Chair. That wording has come from the developer's submission of documents relating to the sustainable checklist. And they've made it clear within that sustainable checklist that in certain aspects that gas boilers will be used for dwellings.
I was only trying to make it so it definitely didn't have to be used, because the wording says it will be used. You could just do a subjective kind of thing, so if they can't do anything else, they can use it, so that would still be open to them, but just give the option of doing something else. Does that make sense?
Sorry, I mean, I think we have to go back to what the actual policies allow, and the policy doesn't allow to make that distinction. I think, unfortunately, we understand why the question is being asked, because of the two sources of energy being proposed, but in planning policy terms, we have no means to require that through the planning policies that we have to assess the application. Sorry.
Councillor Copley, was that 9.9.65 you were?
Yeah, 9.65. Sorry, just because I
Page-
normally draft a lot of wording in my day job, and I just don't see why you have to say it will be used. It's just it can be used.
Yes, it's not a condition though, it's just part of the...
Yeah, but I just thought that it's just saying definitively it's something that could be used. Maybe you could put it on the condition saying it's an option.
I
But
mean,
it doesn't sound
I'm
like,
getting the impression that we
doesn't
can't-
sound
we-
like that is an option, so.
it isn't an
Oh,
option.
there we go.
Well,
Councillor,
sorry, can I,
no,
sorry.
Councillor Still first and then Councillor Dunlop.
All I was going to ask, while the drawings are up on the wall there, could I ask the Highways Office first of all to tell me the narrowing down of the road, there's already a narrowing down there. Is that going to be moved beyond the other site entrance? That was my first point. And my second point is that I thought the use of gas boilers was something we actually government ruled on. And I believe at one time it was talked about no gas boilers after 2025. And
Well,
so why are we talking about this? Because we can't change it. The officers hasn't got the authority to do that.
Well, we'll move on from that and we'll look at it. Is it something that the highways officer could address? Your point about the narrowing of the road.
So there's an existing narrowed section of road quite a bit further south over a bridge. I think it's over the river with a priority system. So the narrowing here is separate to that. It's further up and it's basically replicating what's further south. So it's it's designed to kind of all flow.
Councillor Devonshire.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I want to come back to this 9.65 because I think Councillor Copley is absolutely right. As a committee, we should be pushing sustainable heating in houses. We should be pushing heat pumps. And here it says that gas boilers will be used in all these dwellings. So I think the developers should be thinking differently and think in the future it's heat pumps, it's not gas boilers. And we should be, as a committee, we should be pushing this in that direction. Thank you.
Councillor Dunlop.
If we're saying that gas boilers will be used, why are we not saying that heat pumps, air source heat pumps will be used?
I
Say
think-
it's preferred, but it doesn't say that they definitely will be used. So this allows for there to only be gas boilers and no air source heat pumps at all.
Well, it's my understanding we can, we have to act within existing policy. And I think Councillor Stowe made a good point that that's where the policy on use of gas boilers is coming from government. And
Yeah, but
we
it
don't have-
doesn't say that you have to use gas boilers, and this is saying that they definitely will.
I don't think we're saying, I'll ask the officer.
Sorry, Chair. I think it's misinterpretation. This is what the applicants have submitted as the energy sources for the dwellings, the masonettes, and all the dwellings within the site. And they have done their work and produced the sustainable checklist. And within the sustainable checklist, they have confirmed that gas boilers will be used. We have to remember that once they get planning, they still have to go through the building regs. So, they're two different issues in terms of gas boilers and sustainability. And there is a condition for them to further come back to the council and officers to finalise their full details of the air source heat pumps, i.e. where they're going to be located, how they're going to look, what systems they're going to use. So I think we just need to be careful that we don't have any policy hook to say they cannot use gas boilers as of right now.
Okay. So can I start wrapping up some of our arguments? We touched on one about the mixture of tenures and housing, and there was, I think there were some representations that 1-bedroom flats aren't needed as much as 3-bedroom flats, and there is some opposition in the district plan and the Watton at Stone plan, and I wonder if we could have one of the officers speak to that.
Thank you. No, I can explain that. Basically, over the course of discussions with the applicant, this issue was raised between the tension between the housing officer advice acting on the basis of the current evidence that is district-wide versus the neighbourhood plan evidence that supported the neighbourhood plan policy that we've been discussing today. The point's been made very clear. I think that the neighbourhood plan itself forms the development plan, part of the development plan for this site, and so officers have had to give that due regard in coming to a conclusion on the housing mix overall, in terms of whether there's not enough larger affordable units as part of the development. In this case, the neighbourhood plan dates back to December last year, where it was adopted, and so it is the most up-to-date piece of evidence. It is the most up-to-date part of the development plan, which is, as we know, over 5 years old, and so the officers have acted upon the advice in the neighbourhood plan and the evidence base that supports the neighbourhood plan in prioritising smaller units as part of this development, and I think that gives you an indication that overall it complies with the development plan as a whole. It may not fulfil that sort of district evidence need, but it meets the local need specific to Walnut Stone, and so we've given that very careful consideration through course of discussions, and we have to also identify that the development does meet the 40% requirement for the quantum of affordable housing. It meets the policy in terms of the tenure for the affordable housing as well, and overall the mix is suitable in the officers' views. And so whilst we share the concern that the district need and the evidence that supports that district need isn't being strictly met in terms of what the priorities are, the proposals are fulfilling the requirement of the development plan for Walnut Stone, and so we've given that the weighting that we consider as officers to be suitable in this case.
I'd also like to go back to the unallocated parking, because I don't think we fully debated that. Does anyone else have anything to say on that? Could one of the officers address the parking allocation? My understanding is that most of the houses have their own parking, but the flats, there's a parking area. Would that be, I mean, a typical arrangement? Is that where does that fall within policy?
In terms of the car parking policy, sorry, go back to car parking. Yes. So as part of the car parking plan, as you can see on the left-hand side, there's literature about meeting the vehicle parking standards, which is a supplementary document as part of the overall local plan needs, and it sets out that one-bedroom dwellings require 1.5 spaces. There's 6 units in total, so total of 9, and accumulates 149 spaces across the whole development. But in terms of the maisonettes, which are the red dotted car parking allocations, and the centrally located dwellings or maisonettes, there's 24 spaces for 18 units, albeit they are 1 beds and 2 beds. So, and on top of that, you can see the blue dots where there's visitor parking, which are again unallocated. So there is some form of overspill, if you may, for those units. But in terms of the car parking standards, which officers and the local plan prescribe to, the development meets the criteria for the car parking spaces across the site.
And do we have policy that specifically relates to allocation of parking spaces?
Sorry, the management of the issues that I think have been raised by several councillors, Councillor Redfern, to start with, the concern was about the management maintenance, wasn't it, of off the car parking spaces that are within blocks of flats and concerns that come from antisocial behaviour. And so the level of parking is different to the sort of management side of the parking situation. So it may be that there is a possibility that a car park management plan could be secured by a condition, and that would detail the measures that would be carried out by the management company in allocating parking spaces, managing the car parking spaces. Even if they are to remain as unallocated, they would at least be monitored, maintained, and the antisocial behaviour is something that could be sort of monitored as part of that process. But as a strict planning policy, the requirement for the level of car parking and sort of sits within a block of flats, it meets those requirements in terms of the policy, but because of the concern about management maintenance has been raised, I think that it is potentially reasonable for a car park management plan condition to be secured in this instance.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Redfern.
I appreciate that answer. However, this is a rural location, and a lot more people will be needing a car to get in and out of Stevenage and Hertford. It's not like a town centre or a town edge location where people can walk or ride a bus or something. So that's why I just don't think the allocation is enough for a rural development. And I know that's the policy. I just disagree with the policy, I suppose. Thank you.
Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you. I totally agree with Councillor Redfern. You're saying there are 18 affordable units there. That's going to be at least 36 cars, and you're allowing for 24. And I've actually just sat here and counted and thinking, with those other 10 cars, you know, where are they going to park? They'll take up all the visitor spaces, and that is when you will get problems. I know the developers don't care about this, because once they've built the houses and they've signed off the site, they don't actually care what happens afterwards. I'm just warning the local parish that you could end up having problems. You know, this is something that I think all developers need to think about.
Okay, so we've looked at the bridge, the housing mix, the parking, drop curbs, and the attenuation basins. Is there anything I've missed or you would like to add? Heat pumps and gas, of course.
There is something else I'd like to say, but I don't suppose it would make any difference. There's a lot of concentration on how noisy heat pumps may be. But if you go to visit the site, the traffic noise is absolutely overwhelming. And the last place I would ever want to live is in that northern part, where the noise is really, really strong. And I know there's going to be a 3-metre barrier, but I really don't think it's going to be enough.
I think there is something in the report about that. Could the officer?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. As part of consulting our consultees, the environmental health team were consulted, noise and air as well as land contamination, and the environmental health team recommended conditions due to the same concerns you've just raised about potential noise to those northern properties, especially along the A602. And I believe condition 18 talks about acoustic fence. So subject to that condition being met, it's considered by officers that the proposal will mitigate any noise impacts from that side of the development.
I believe condition 12 covers some of that as well.
Yes, sorry, condition 12 as well.
Just would any of us like to live in a place like that, even with the noise mitigation? Any officers or any of us? I'm not sure that we would, but that's my comment. Thank.
Right, if we have nothing, Councillor Connolly,
Can I talk about air quality?
yes.
I can't find it, but there is a report on air quality. I felt it concentrated on analysing the inside of the site, counting the number of cars and the traffic journeys that they would make. But I didn't see that it addressed potential pollution coming from the A602 affecting those same houses we've just been talking about. And then secondly, there's a report that talks about the air quality, and I'm sorry, I'm going back to heat pumps again, but it says it's noted the applicant has committed to the provision of air source heat pumps with electric boilers as contingency, and so the low NOx boiler planning condition is not required. So if we don't have a condition on NOx, or maybe we need to put one in provisionally just in case we get gas boilers, but it looks like, according to this report, which is the Environmental Health Department, and talks about the conditions that they're recommending. That's where that particular point is. So just two questions on the air quality.
Yeah, that.
Thank you, Chair. Are you talking about the environmental health, air quality comments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my second question.
So, yes. So in terms of, again, they were consulted on the proposal. They've looked through the submitted details and have made comments, and the conditions that they have suggested have been replicated in the list of conditions at the end of the report. So happy to take your point across that if boilers are required, then they should meet that criteria as set out with the environmental health team.
And question one was about the boundary potential pollution.
Apologies. Again, the environmental health air quality team were consulted on the application, and they haven't raised any issues regarding the air quality from the A602 to the site.
Councillor Stowe.
I was waiting for you to look my way, you see. All it was, there's mentions of bird and bat boxes, but I didn't see, I may have missed it, whereabouts you're going to deal with this and provide bat and bird boxes on the properties or wherever. So could you explain that for me?
Please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not specified, but condition 4 will cover any ecological enhancements. Happy to add a point in there specifying birds and bat boxes.
So if you've got nothing else to add, will I go through I'll go through all the conditions and informatives that we've. Oh, Councillor Stowe.
I'm quite happy to propose this, to agree this as officers, plus the conditions we've asked for the fencing, and for other things like that. You can list them there. You've got them all written down, I'm sure. If you could list those, and I'm prepared to propose it with those conditions.
I think I'd like to go through them one at a time, if that's okay. So we'll start with the fencing around the attenuation basins. I'm not sure if I've got very good wording. Could the officer?
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at condition 18, which we discussed previously, I was thinking prior to first occupation of any dwellings hereby approved, means of enclosure, comma, as well as the attenuation area
Would that be accept-
shall be,
Yeah, we'll need to include the reason for the condition being that it's a safety issue as well as amenity. So
It's mainly for safety of young children, isn't it? That's really what we're saying.
Okay, well, we've had that proposed. Second, does anyone want to second that? Councillor Buckmaster? Do you want me to do that? Oh yeah, Councillor Still, could you make your specific?
Right, okay, I will. I propose that we make a condition that covers fencing of the attenuation basin and also some sort of detail to mention the bird and back boxes. That's what I'm asking.
Okay, members, are we happy to, anyone want to second that? Councillor Buckmaster, and all in approval of that? And I think that's everyone. A second, Councillor Buckmaster. Now we had some other matters there. Done the attenuation basins. We've been talked out of the informative on the bridge, saying that we'd reached. Sorry? Was in that case, condition, the application is approved. It's been granted. Okay, we're going to move on to the next application.
Excuse me, I didn't realise we were voting for the whole thing. I'm sorry, that wasn't at all clear.
I didn't realise that either.
Would
If they're not clear, then the proposal was made by Councillor Stowe to go. Sorry, Councillor Stowe made the proposal to go with the officer recommendation plus the 2 amendments to the fencing around the water and the bird and bat boxes. It was seconded by Councillor Buckmaster, and then you all voted. That was the proposal put forward by Councillor Stowe.
a member can put forward a proposal, and it was seconded by.
Chairman, Ryan is correct. There was a proposal, a seconder, clear conditions were mentioned, Councillor mentioned a couple, and you all voted. It's been granted.
Sorry, could we take the vote again? So just so that we're clear, what we all know what we're voting for.
No, we can't.
Thank you.
We're moving on. So we have 6B. Members, before us, we have an application ref 324 0490 HH for an external air source heat pump unit at 18B Bengio Street, Hertford. And Elizabeth Oswick is going to present the application.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a householder planning application for 18B Bengio Street, in which the applicants wish to install an external air source heat pump to the garden of their property. The use of the air source heat pump will replace the existing gas boiler at the property, providing a more sustainable source for internal heating and hot water. So here we can see the location of 18B in the locality of Bengio. The entrance to the site lies to the east of Bengio Street. The site is within the Hertford Conservation Area as well as the Bengio Neighbourhood Plan area. Next. So here we have the site plan allowing you to put the property into context with its surroundings. So 18B is a semi-detached property. However, both properties sit a substantial distance from the main road of Bengio Street. Access to the site is given by a footpath which runs alongside number 20 Bengio Street, as displayed in the red line of the first site plan. It should be noted that no public access is given, so it's not a public footpath, and it doesn't lead anywhere except to provide access for the application site as well as the rear gardens of 9 and 11 Warren Park. So this plan highlights the separation distance between the application site and that of the surrounding area and neighbouring properties. So this plan indicates the location of the air source heat pump within the site. You can see it is located to the northeast of the property. It sits approximately 0.7 metres from the rear elevation and 0.2 metres from the northern boundary of the site. The applicants have also provided the specifications of the air source heat pump, which we can see is an Ecodan monoblock air source heat pump with the dimensions of approximately 1 metre in height and width and 0.5 metres in depth. So this is a relatively small addition to the site. The air source heat pump comprises of renewable energy technology, which reduces carbon emissions and shall become an integral feature connected to the use of the dwelling house, improving upon the sustainability credentials of the site. So this should be a material consideration to the decision. So the proposed elevation drawings displayed here highlight how this technology shall appear in its environment. The unit shall be obscured by proposed hedging, which shall act as both a visual and acoustic barrier. Due to the private location of the property, the minimal scale of the development, and the visual barrier of the proposed hedging, it's not considered that the air source heat pump would have a detrimental visual impact. The technology shall be largely obscured and shall appear discrete in its setting. It is also not considered that development would result in visual harm to the character of the conservation area. But a condition is still suggested to ensure that the implementation of the hedging is undertaken. So in regards to the amenity of neighbouring properties, due to the nature and scale of the development, there is considered to be very limited impact. The slide provides some images of the closest residential properties, which there's not really considered to be any impact arising from overlooking, overshadowing or overbearing. So in this assessment, consideration is primarily given to the noise impact from the air source heat pump, as we're aware that air source heat pumps do obviously generate noise when they're utilised. The closest neighbouring property is the attached dwelling of 18A Bengio Street, which is to the west. And then we also have numbers 9 and 11 Warren Park to the south and 13 Warren Park, also known as Highmead, to the east. The separation distance between the air source heat pump and these properties is considered sufficient to largely mitigate the noise impact. There's also a lot of landscaping which would further mitigate this, as you can probably see from my pictures. It's looking very green. So the environmental health officer has reviewed the submitted information with the specifications of the air source heat pump and has confirmed that it would meet the East Herts District Council noise criteria at the nearest and most affected neighbouring properties. So it is therefore not considered that the proposal would have any adverse impacts to the amenity of neighbouring occupiers. So therefore, in conclusion, there is not considered to be any visual or amenity concerns with the implementation of the proposal. There are sustainability benefits, which would be a material consideration to the scheme, and is therefore recommended that planning permission should be granted subject to appropriate conditions. Thank you.
Okay, so does anybody have any comments? Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to see air source heat pump coming up this, and the fact that you're asking us to grant this. Because, you know, I know the several residents in Sawbridgeworth that have applied for air source heat pumps and have been refused. I also, looking down the list of the appeals, how many, I think there's 2 on the appeals list as well, where they have been refused. So, you know, I was hoping that this was actually going to be a change of policy from the officers, that they're going to look more favourably, because, you know, we're all wanting to work towards being more sustainable. And that, you know, this is as we're going to move forward as a council, that we actually approve more air source heat pumps for our residents.
Councillor Stowe.
In my experience of people that have got air source heat pumps, it's the noise that's always the problem. I know it meets with the requirements, but this particular property is so far away from any neighbours. I think, you know, I mean, if you had a swimming pool, it'd make more noise than the pump. So I really can't see any reasons why we could actually refuse it personally.
Councillor Devonshire.
Thank you, Chair. I'm obviously in favour of this, my comments on the last application. However, fitting an air source heat pump on an older property tends to generate a lot of heat loss through the walls. And I suspect that instead of saving energy, this will actually, that his electricity bill will go through the roof in my experience, because you just lose all the heat through the walls, unfortunately. But having said all that, I'm in favour. Thank you.
I tend to disagree with that. It's very
Councillor
much
Dunlop.
dependent on the technical solution that you put in, and if you size the property correctly and do the survey correctly, that I don't think that's sort of relevant to have the discussion about heat pumps in this, but I very much support it, just as Councillor Stowe does.
I mean, I think what's crucial here is neighbour amenity and the hedge. Does anybody have any comment on that? Councillor Connolly.
I think it's a shame that we are going to such lengths to justify the approval of it. We don't need a hedge, and, you know, God forbid that a member of the public would look in the garden and see a heat pump. I mean, what are we so afraid of? It's just ridiculous. The other problem is they're not noisy. There are already UK standards that you can't sell one in this country without noise emission limits. And yet we're still suggesting they have a noise problem. I've had 2, one in an old house and it didn't cause huge electricity bills, and one in a new house. They don't make very much noise at all. It's about the same as a fridge, but it's outside. And I can tell you that a hot tub makes an awful lot more noise, and I have the experience of that next door as well. So, but I definitely approve of this.
Yeah, I'd see that we've got condition 3, which is the hedging one, and that's to do with policies DES4 and EQ2 of the district plan. Could you just go into more detail about why that condition is required?
So the hedging is shown on the plans that we would be approving, so that's why we're considering that in the development proposal. Policies DES4 and EQ2. So DES4 mentions about neighbour amenity, hence why that has been referenced in the recommended condition, and EQ2 is about noise impacts. So hence why they're both relevant to the landscaping, the hedging condition, which would act as an acoustic barrier.
Councillor Stowe.
It's always me, isn't it? I'm sorry. But the hedge is there for the amenity of the residents put the application in, I'd have thought, because they don't want to look at it. And it will also, bear in mind, it's only 0.7 away from their property, the window at the side. So it's really to help with the noise down here themselves, really, I'd have thought. But not in affecting other property, is it? I mean, they're miles away.
Does anybody? Sarah Saunders.
Thank you. Can I just make a general point? Because there's points been raised about kind of giving the impression that the planning officers are anti applications that come forward for air source heat pumps in general. We obviously do have to make sure that we're checking and understanding the impact and the amenity impact, including noise, but actually just to help residents navigate through the process, particularly where they need planning permission. We're providing some information on our website where we've been working with our colleagues in environmental health to make sure the right information is available. So I just want to provide those assurances. We've obviously got to work within the system and take on board that comments that come through from environmental health. But I just want to put that marker down that we are actually trying to provide information to try and help residents navigate through the planning system when it comes to needing permission for these.
Okay, are we ready to make a proposal? Councillor Redfern.
Could I propose this, to accept this, please?
Seconder. Councillor Devonshire. And votes to approve. Permission is granted. Thank you. Right, now we've got item number 7, items for reporting and noting. So there's the appeals. Anybody got any comments on that? Urgent business then. Is there any urgent business? No. None. Members, that concludes the agenda, and I declare the meeting closed at 9 o'clock.
Well done. That was really good. I know you dropped the ball slightly on the vote.